I wrote a neurodivergent romance for the entirety of my UCLA Screenwriting Program certificate course, all 4 core courses. It's kind of a knockoff Leap Year 2, and this is exactly how I did it.
Don't let your dreams be dreams.
If you don't know me, I'm Pika Lee, and I'm a writer and filmmaker, and I typically make videos for you to help you figure out your writer's process. I give you a peek into mine, and I also happen to work in the entertainment industry, so I try to demystify a little bit about the entertainment industry when I can. I've been talking about UCLA Extension courses for a good amount of years now, since I started my channel. Back to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing. Signed up for UCLA Extension Writing Program class because there wasn't much information about any of the courses that I wanted to take for screenwriting, and I heard such great things about UCLA Extension. So many alumni had actually broken into the industry just by going to those courses. Okay, it was much more than the courses. They did all of the work that you need to do to get into screenwriting and to break into Hollywood. Last year, I graduated, and this year, I promised that I would tell you a little bit more about how writing the actual script went, not just about how the courses and instructors worked and what I thought about it, but really kind of deep dive into my process. So in this video, I'm finally going to talk to you about that process. And if you stay to the end, you're going to see my instructor of choice giving me feedback for my script.
What happens after the romantic comedy?
Yes, exactly. That's what I struggled with so much when I was in your class. I was like, the first act is plaguing me. And that way you get a little taste and feel for how feedback should feel, should sound, and how to react to feedback. He also did coverage for my script, so I will talk a little bit about that at the end. The entire idea that I had was actually sparked by Leap Year and Happy Anniversary. It was kind of a mix of both. I really wanted to continue on from the end of Leap Year, and I thought that once I went into the program, writing a romance would be so much easier than trying to write something that was sci-fi that I already had going or horror. So I decided that I would actually focus on honing the craft of romance. Now, if you know my channel, you know that I like a lot of Hallmark. Hallmark is my thing. I absolutely love binge watching it. I love writing it. And so I just thought that because I'd read and watched so much romance, it would be pretty easy to do. It's kind of silly to say. And the idea pretty much centered around what happens after Happily Ever After you get that dream 3-day vacation where you meet the love of your life and then you start your life together, like what happens after the movie ends. And I just wanted to kind of pick up where that was, and that's where my idea got generated. So some of the challenges that I had started with the process. I already had the bones of what I wanted, and that was fantastic. I basically sketched out who my main characters were, their ages. That stuff was pretty easy. Did they have a family, and how involved were their family, and all of those fun things, because that helps build your story. So once I start thinking about who my character is in the idea stage, that's where I start building, I guess, the premise and the plot. Hello, scribes. I just had to stop you really quickly so I could tell you that I've got a new Notion website for you with a bunch of free things, including the Script Vault, which has the Feature Script Vault and the TV Script Vault. And if you have a script you'd like to donate, feel free to email me. You can also find a really quick link to my Etsy page where you can buy your own writer-verified blue checkmark pin. And once I have free downloads for you, I'm going to drop the link right there. I'm hoping to add more free downloadable resources for you. Okay, back to the video. The next thing I had to focus on was the outline and development. In course 1, you're really going to sketch out the major beats, and the major beats, if you're not quite familiar, is going to be the major 3-act structure beats. Those are the beats that I personally follow. There are other smaller beats in between that get you from those major beats, and they're listed a little bit more heavily in more of like Save the Cat, or there's some story circles that explain them a little bit differently. And then you go into the treatment, which is taking those beats and filling them out with more information so that they become a full treatment of what your full script should look like. It's basically the prose without the dialogue of what will happen in your script. The thing is, when you start to get to the writing, there's more development happening. And that's 10 times harder. Especially when you have a deadline where you have to do 4 to 5 pages, or I would really say 3 to 5 pages per week. And that's where I immediately started to feel like romance was a lot harder because I didn't understand it as much as I thought I did when I went into the class. There are just so many different elements that you have to get together. There are just so many internal things going on with the character that's a little bit more relevant to producing this beautiful love story. I also struggled really heavily in the development stage with where to start the romance because remember, I'm starting it kind of like, think leap year's ending. I'm starting it right after leap year ends. So yes, it's kind of a knockoff leap year 2. And I was like, where do I start the normal life, the everyday life for this character to set up who they are before they're getting married? Do we start at the proposal? Do we start just back it up before the proposal? Do we start it where she had a job and she just goes on this vacation, never comes back? There's a lot of different ways to start it. Did she want to go with a friend to Ireland where she's there for just a girls' weekend and then she never leaves? She there for vacation, a wedding? What do I do? Interestingly, my instructor gave me some feedback after we'd gone far into the beats, and it made me realize that I needed to watch some more similar movies. So I ended up watching While You Were Sleeping, which was one of the feels of the movie that I wanted to kind of draw upon from when I was younger and what I enjoyed watching. And so I started to look into similar comps. That's probably the first place I would start if I was redeveloping this all over again. I would probably read and watch these comps to see if I could take certain elements from different romances that are my all-time favorite that feel like they make sense for my story, and I would probably rewatch them, take notes, and incorporate them somehow, I guess. My instructor helped me realize that I really wanted to go a little bit different with my story. I didn't want it to be this super traditional. I wanted to make it a little bit more unique, a little bit more original, thinking of myself, and I decided that I was going to make these two neurodivergent. Interestingly, I made one OCD, which I am not, nor do I have any family who's OCD, but I thought it would be a really interesting twist to someone who might be a little bit more on the neurodivergent, messy side. So I ended up making my love interests have neurodivergent tendencies, one OCD, and the other ADHD. I also gave him symmetry OCD, which is a little bit different than traditional OCD. I felt like it would introduce a lot more conflict. I felt like it would be something that you hadn't really seen talked about in a movie either. So these are the reasons why I decided this would be the most fun for me to, and challenging for me to incorporate into a romance. So when you're thinking, I think, through your development stage, try to figure out something, personality traits or something like that, ideals that they might have that are very conflicting, because that's going to be helpful when you're building tension and conflict, and not make them such perfect human beings. I would brainstorm and write everything that you can about your characters, your plot, your world, how the resolution would happen, and I would probably try to chart out a little bit of the conflict. What are the things that are coming to your mind that feel like they're very conflicting? And definitely hone down your theme. I'll get to more about the theme later, because in the second course, I completely went off the rails and I had so much trouble. But after I had my feedback with my instructor, who was from my second course, there were things that I could have done better in that course. And now I get to do them during the revision stage. This is another real reason why I like having a beat sheet, because I think a beat sheet is a really easy bird's eye view for you to go back and just look through everything and see where you can introduce more conflict, more stakes, which, to be fair, I am still 100% getting better at. I think everybody starts to get better as they write more. Having an outline so that you can see everything laid out for you and figuring out where you can add more, chef's kiss. I also can't really hold on to everything in my head, so outlines for me and note-taking on development, immensely helpful. Usually Act 1 is very easy for me, but remember that I had that issue with developing where I wanted to start in the first act. In the second course, my instructor was the person that I actually had give me the feedback, and he opened my eyes to all the different types of openings that you can have in Act 1. And so because of that, I then struggled with perfectionism. I didn't know where was the perfect place to start. It's almost as if I thought that if someone read the wrong opening, they would just be like, this is trash. So there were many different openings that I can introduce the character and her life. And I think that when I went to decide what opening to use, I stuck with sort of a traditional one that you would see, and that was fine. It's not as if it was bad. I actually was reading it this year, 2026 now, and when I was reading it, I thought, this actually was not bad. I don't know why I changed it, but I can go back because I have the original copy. Highly suggest when you revise something, you just duplicate the actual project and revise and then name it revision 1. If you make smaller adjustments, then you can put 1.1 or 1.2. But if you make major changes, then you can duplicate it and put, revision 2.0. So I had so many that I was so confused which one would really make sense for opening with a romance, and I changed it so many times. I fell behind in class, honestly. Yes, even I fall behind in classes, even though I was used to writing, feature films and had practice and I had done it before, did not mean anything. I was falling behind with the rest of the people who had just come into the class, and this was their first time ever writing a script, versus there were other people who had clearly written scripts before. So we all had our struggles. Interestingly, from the very first, I would say, iteration of the script to now, even though there's been lots of different changes, there are some scenes that were super consistently staying in the script. And I think there's still even one scene that I'm still consistently going to keep in there. And that's sort of the introduction to the main romantic lead. His story began right opening up with him in Ireland at his friend's farm. Proposal happening for a very good friend of his. His ex is there, and you see him shifting on the dirt and fixing his clothing because he's not quite comfortable, and the anxiety of it all is happening, and it's not a lot of dialogue between anybody in that scene, but it shows him so well that I don't think I've ever taken it out, how he just sort of longingly looks at his girlfriend who's there with her new person, and how she looks back at him, and you can clearly see the tension. You can see that she's causing him the discomfort, that he's sort of trying to get his clothes just right on him. It's really interesting to read back the first edition of your script, so I highly recommend it, even if it's kind of cringe. And there's also something beautiful about not using too much dialogue to convey something. I was able to actually look back and see that a lot of learning happened during this course. So I will tell you from experience, especially after this experience, having complete scripts does not equate to knowing story, does not equate to knowing how characters work, how dialogue works. So I wasn't yet good at development, and I think that's what I learned from this particular script. I actually developed my main character as sort of a romance ad specialist in the very first iteration of my script, and she gets laid over in a small part of Ireland on her way to the UK to pitch a meeting for a new ad. And so I had all of this stuff going on in the very beginning to set up her, just the beginning of her life. I think another thing that interestingly happened is I got a lot of really great worksheets in the second course from my instructor, and I didn't quite utilize them because I thought I knew what I was doing. Do the worksheets. Yeah. Do the worksheets. I won't be giving you the worksheets. I'm sorry, because I do want to, that is material that belongs to someone else, so I won't be giving you the worksheets, but I will tell you more about why going back to those worksheets was more important for me. I think I ended on page 24, which was the big romantic gesture from the main character. Isabel, my main character, comes back to basically profess that she felt a spark with Finn, the magnificent drop to your knee and get engaged all of a sudden moment that I really, really wanted to start the story on. Now we're moving on to Act 2, Part 1. I don't really have much to say about Act 2. I think it went okay for me, writing-wise. I didn't really struggle too much with it. I think I went from page 24 to 53 for this span of pages that I had to write. Writing Act 2, Part 2, and Act 3. So eventually I rewrote the first act because I really couldn't stand it and I did not like it. I just didn't feel like everything was aligning the way that I wanted it to. I felt like things were running a little bit long. My pages were going a little long. I know I said that I didn't really have any issue with writing the act before that, which is the first half of Act 2. I didn't have any issues, no. But it was when I got to Act 2, Part 2, where I really started to realize that things just weren't mathematically aligning. They were running a little bit past where I wanted them to be. And it has been sort of escalating until now, and they're both starting to feel like they don't like, one another, can't accept them for who they are. So that's sort of where I ended. So I rewrote the first act, of course. That's where it had to have started. That's where I went off track, I'm sure. And I completely changed the beginning from her being an ad agent who got this big opportunity to go to London and getting stuck in Ireland. I ended up making it about her brother having gotten married in England where he met his wife. Basically her just attending his wedding as a bridesmaid and them telling her maybe she should just go on a little vacation and unwind, and she goes to Ireland and, meets the love of her life. There at the wedding, they also kind of have the backstory of her parents being in this big romantic long-term relationship and how the spark is the reason that they met. And so all of that backstory kind of unfolds at the wedding. I think I got a comment about that, so we'll talk about that at the end. But I have to reread it and see if I still like it versus the original, because I may like the original more. Not sure. Because I do, in the original, have a really fun scene where she's doing a sort of going to a jewelry store with a coworker and pretending to be someone who's just a general patron of the store, and he pretends to do this whole lavish proposal, and you think that she's getting engaged, and then you realize that she kind of set it up just so she could do research for this ad that she's doing for their company. So and I thought it was cute. It was kind of a cute thing. She tells him oh no, you don't have it, the spark. He's like, I have it. And I just thought it was so funny and cute. You had to have read it. Honestly, there's not much documentation that I had from the third and fourth class. Now in the fourth course, we actually did a whole revising session where we switched off scripts with someone that we were designated in the course. We read their script and we gave some feedback. And then we would also be getting feedback from the instructor herself. I was able to do that. We had about a week, and I picked really some of the simpler feedback to give this person. Not that they really needed to change that much. Their script was pretty good, and we both had romance scripts, which was great. So we got matched up, and we both had the same genre, which was fun. And we were able to give each other those changes to make. And I took some of the simpler advice as well from the advice that I got from her and implemented that into my script when I did a revision. And then you submit it. And that's kind of the end of writing your script. You have those weeks throughout 4 courses that take several weeks to write your script. So the revision outside of the certificate program, how did that work? My revision process is I like to read the script in PDF format, and in Acrobat, I will highlight and make notes. And then I will go through the primary document and I will take a look page by page and look at the comments, find that line, and edit, basically. In the PDF, you can also like strike through any dialogue you don't want or any action that you don't want. I can rewrite it right in the comments, and then I can copy and paste it in. And that's how I get quickly through my revisions. At this part, when I'm doing my own revisions outside of class, I'm heavily trimming dialogue. Like I'm going through it, and if it doesn't need to be said, if it's redundant, I get rid of it. But then I'm also taking a look at the dialogue and thinking, how can I restate this in a way that's either not so obvious, like not as on the nose, or something that it feels a little bit more heartfelt. And so I do a lot more with dialogue in this stage than I would in any. I got the pages actually down from 122 to 113, and that is because I got rid of as much excess as I could. Any scene that didn't forward move the plot, it didn't tell my character to do something that leads into the next scene, I got rid of those, shortened it as much as I could, took out any characters who really didn't come back. They were just utilized for that one scene and nothing else. I got rid of those people because I could do double duty with other characters. So that's how I sort of go through my revisions. And in the end, I ended up sending it out to very close to the deadline, like a day or two before it ended, for the benefit that I had with UCLA Extension Program, which was the writing program allows you to get feedback from an instructor of your choice. You could choose, I think, up to 3 in case one isn't available. And that's what I did. I picked my instructor from Feature Film too, because I learned so much from his class, and it really made me reshape and rethink how I worked my first act. You know, I always research my instructors as well, and of course, I knew that this instructor was still currently working in the industry, still getting things produced and made. I couldn't believe also that he gave me a consider with changes, because, I don't know, that's pretty generous. I just thought that was very generous. He could have definitely put pass on my writing, and I would have still been totally fine with that. For the premise, he scored me excellent. For the story, he scored me good. For the characters, fair, which is fair. Dialogue, excellent. Structure, good. Writing, good. And originality, good. Overall, he said he enjoyed the premise, which, thank goodness.
Cool. So I mean, let me just first say I really, really enjoyed it. Obviously, I remember the script, and I really enjoyed it. I thought you did a really good job of doing it.
He did want a more concrete representation of the spark.
Positive. I liked it, but let's get into like how do you get it better? How do you make it win? How do you get something that's produced? So first, I love the spark idea. I love that concept. I think you need to sit on it longer.
Okay.
Like I think we need to see a physical representation of the spark.
Okay.
So like even like I know that Isabel, that's her name, right? She
Mhm.
she talks about her mom and dad seeing a spark. That should be your opening scene.
I introduced the idea of the spark test being what brought her parents together and what has made them have such a long lasting relationship. That seemed very perfect. And then I also introduced the idea that she sort of is only looking for that spark to happen so that she can figure out who that one is.
So then it makes more sense that she friggin' marries this person after like a day or whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so then we see that like she's been told about this whole thing, like this kind of crazy thing since the beginning of her life,
Okay.
and that she's been on the lookout for it. And then now when she meets a guy and it's there, she's like, yeah, let's do it. Especially because he seems like not super pleasant sometimes.
Told me it would be best to develop the romance a little bit more.
Give him some reason for us to like say this guy could be a good guy in the future
Okay.
earlier. I didn't love like maybe give him something that he could be, redeemable. At least we know that he's going to be redeemable in the future. And I think
Okay.
that there has to be like I think that there should be something between them that remains good the whole some kind of thing that makes them like that no matter what they always come back to. I think I didn't I think we need to do a little bit more development with her.
Okay.
I wanted to know more about who she was, her other relationships, her passions, her like she talks about a job, but I don't know, like she's passionate about it or like her graphic design. I want to know like, even her relationship with her parents more, just more about like, and I think it's part of it. It's like right now when they're talking, they only talk about their relationship.
Funny enough, he also said that there needed to be a stronger reason for the two to stay together because it, they couldn't. I think I tried not to make him too good of a guy and too dreamy and all this. And then I ended up making him too brooding and horrible, I think. Like, not a very good, charming guy. So, one of the points was to make my main romantic lead, Finn, more charming, more likable.
So and then I wrote like, so what I like to do when I read scripts is I write notes as I'm reading, like either
Mm-hmm.
questions or things I like, and the reason I do that is I want you to hear my thoughts when I'm reading it. Like I might be like, hey, I don't understand why this is happening. And
Mm-hmm.
later it might come out why, like I find out why it's happening, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
what's good for you as a writer is be like, either I need to fix it or I'm okay with him finding out 10 pages later.
Yeah.
And then like because I think there has to be a truth moment. I mean, if I was doing this, there would be a truth moment where she's like, like mom's like you broke up, like, and she's like, yeah, it's not like, like it's not perfect. It wasn't great. And she's like, well, no relationships are perfect,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they have like a whole thing about it. And then like she sees that, like, and then like if you were to rewrite it, I would like write, or if I were to write, I would be like, you go back to that opening scene and then you see the flaws in that scene.
Okay, I see what you mean too. Maybe it doesn't make a difference to remove out not make a difference, but like plot wise, I can technically remove the certificate side, the marriage certificate thing, and it wouldn't impact it as much as I thought it would anyway.
Yeah.
Um
Because
it's not like
ultimately,
it strengthens the story, I think. I don't think
yeah.
it does
Oh,
anything strengthen it
no.
that much.
And by the way, I don't think you need the year later. I think it could just be right away. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
No problem.
I'm only sort of grazing some of the notes that he gave me. A lot of it was based around, I think, strengthening the character would then in turn strengthen some of the plot a bit. And definitely during our talk, he referenced for me to go back to some character worksheets he gave me and thematic worksheets that he gave me, which actually I went back to and realized that I thought I understood theme and I didn't understand theme as well as I thought. And he gives you kind of a way to figure out theming and then build the opposite of that theme into your character, which I really liked. And it took me a little bit of time, but I understand it a lot better now. I might have to brush up a couple more times to make sure I really nail it when I start writing my characters. But I think at this point, I have a good handle of structure. I just need to work more on character development. And that sounds reasonable to me. It's really hard for me to sort of tell you what's in my head some of the time for my process. So if you have any questions, definitely ask it down below. Maybe it'll make a great video if you want to know about it. I'm definitely not a perfect writer, and hopefully it helps you understand how to build your own process. Now, because this is the first time I've ever gotten feedback from someone who's actually working in the industry, who's a professional, who has written things that have been produced with big actors and big names, I was really excited and very nervous about how I was going to take some of the feedback, but I overall think that taking feedback, you just have to tell yourself that it's learning. It's part of the learning process. And if they're giving you feedback, it's for a reason because they have been there, done that. If something didn't work for my story, I still wrote it down so that I can consider how to work with it. And that way I can utilize some of the golden nuggets from what I was getting from someone who's currently working in the industry and either make it work with what I already have and what I think works. You have the permission to fight for things that make sense for what you're trying to do with your story. Anyways, I hope that helps you guys. Thanks for sticking with me on this one, scribes. I will see you on the next one.